Professor Julia Martinez had examined thousands of historical photographs during her tenure as digital archivist at Columbia University, but when she opened the manila envelope from the Henderson estate donation, she found herself staring at an image that challenged every assumption she held about photographic authenticity and historical documentation. The photograph showed a formal wedding ceremony from 1916, with the bride and groom posed in the center of an elaborate church altar, surrounded by dozens of guests dressed in the finest Edwardian fashion. Yet there, in the third row of wedding guests, stood a man in a perfectly appropriate period suit who was unmistakably holding what appeared to be a modern smartphone. The object in the man's hands was small, rectangular and black, with the distinctive proportions and reflective screen characteristic of contemporary mobile devices. He held it at the exact angle that modern wedding guests use when photographing ceremonies, his posture and positioning identical to countless smartphone users, capturing important moments at social gatherings. Most remarkably, the device appeared to be displaying a bright screen, suggesting it was actively in use during the 1916 ceremony. Julia had built her reputation on debunking photographic hoaxes and identifying anachronisms in supposedly historical images, but this photograph resisted every conventional explanation she could devise. The technical quality was consistent with 1916 photographic processes, showing none of the telltale signs of digital manipulation or composite work. The chemical composition of the photographic paper matched samples from the World War I era, and the image showed appropriate aging patterns for a century-old photograph. Most significantly, the photograph had been discovered among the personal effects of Margaret Henderson, whose family had maintained meticulous records of their social activities during the early 20th century. According to the accompanying documentation, the image showed the wedding of Margaret's sister Catherine to businessman Robert Whitfield on June 15, 1916, at St. Stephen's Episcopal Church in Manhattan. The guest list had been preserved in family correspondence, and every visible face in the photograph could be accounted for according to the social records of the prominent New York families who had attended the ceremony. The man holding the anachronistic device was identified in Margaret Henderson's wedding album as Mr. Thomas Ashford, a distant cousin of the bride who had traveled from Boston to attend the ceremony. According to family genealogy records, Thomas had been 34 years old at the time of the wedding and had worked as an engineer for a telecommunications company that was developing early wireless communication systems. Julia's initial assumption was that the object in Thomas's hands must be some form of early electronic device that superficially resembled a modern smartphone. The early 1900s had seen rapid development in communication technology, including wireless telegraph systems and experimental radio devices that might have been portable enough to carry to a social gathering. However, her research into the telecommunications technology available in 1916 revealed that no portable communication devices existed that matched the size, proportions, or apparent functionality of the object visible in the photograph. The closest technological equivalent from the period would have been a portable wireless telegraph receiver, but such devices were large, cumbersome instruments that bore no resemblance to the sleek object that Thomas Ashford appeared to be holding. Moreover, the apparent presence of an illuminated screen on the device was completely inconsistent with any communication technology that existed in 1916, when electronic displays were limited to simple indicator lights on large stationary equipment. Julia decided to examine the photograph using advanced digital analysis techniques, hoping to determine whether the anomalous object might be an optical illusion created by shadows, reflections, or photographic artifacts. High-resolution scanning revealed that the device in Thomas's hands was clearly defined and showed consistent lighting and perspective with the rest of the image, ruling out the possibility that it was a shadow or reflection that coincidentally resembled a modern smartphone. Spectroscopic analysis of the photographic emulsion confirmed that the image had been created using authentic 1916 chemical processes, with no evidence of modern materials or digital manipulation. Most significantly, the analysis revealed that the area of the photograph showing the anachronistic device contained the same chemical composition as the surrounding areas, indicating that it had been captured during the original exposure rather than being added through subsequent manipulation. Julia found herself confronting evidence that appeared to document the presence of 21st century technology at a 1916 social gathering, a conclusion that violated fundamental assumptions about the linear progression of technological development and the impossibility of anachronistic objects appearing in authentic historical documents. Her investigation into Thomas Ashford's background revealed details that deepened the mystery surrounding his apparent possession of advanced technology. According to business records from the period, Thomas had worked for the American Wireless Telegraph Company, where he had been involved in developing experimental communication systems for military and commercial use. His personnel files, preserved in corporate archives, described him as an unusually innovative engineer who had proposed several communication technologies that were considered far ahead of their time. Most intriguingly, Thomas's work records included references to experimental projects that his supervisors had considered too advanced for practical implementation. These projects had apparently involved concepts that would not become technologically feasible until decades later, including miniaturized communication devices and systems for transmitting visual images over wireless networks. Julia discovered that Thomas had left his position with American Wireless Telegraph in late 1916, shortly after the wedding where the mysterious photograph had been taken. His departure had apparently been precipitated by conflicts with company management over his insistence on pursuing research projects that his supervisors considered scientifically impossible given the technological limitations of the period. After leaving American Wireless Telegraph, Thomas had disappeared from New York entirely, with no subsequent records of his employment or activities. Family correspondence indicated that he had claimed to be pursuing independent research, but had provided no details about the nature of his work or his source of funding. Most mysteriously, Thomas had apparently maintained contact with his family through letters that contained accurate predictions about future technological developments, including descriptions of communication devices that would not be invented until decades later. Julia's research into Thomas's post-1916 activities led her to contact genealogical researchers who had been studying the Ashford family history. These researchers had documented Thomas's unusual correspondence with family members, which had continued sporadically until 1923, before ending abruptly with no explanation. The letters, preserved by Thomas's descendants, contained detailed technical descriptions of communication technologies that closely matched innovations that would not appear until the 1940s and beyond. Thomas had written about portable communication devices with visual displays, wireless networks that could connect multiple users simultaneously, and systems for storing and retrieving vast amounts of information using electronic methods. Most remarkably, Thomas's letters had included accurate predictions about specific technological milestones, including the development of television, computer networks, and mobile communication systems. The precision of these predictions far exceeded what could reasonably be attributed to educated guessing based on existing technological trends. Julia realized that Thomas Ashford's apparent possession of a smartphone in 1916 might be connected to his demonstrated ability to envision technological developments that would not occur until decades later. However, the mechanism by which he might have obtained access to such advanced technology remained completely inexplicable according to conventional understanding of technological development and historical causation. Her investigation took an unexpected direction when she discovered that Thomas Ashford had not been the only individual in early 20th century America who had demonstrated unusual knowledge of future technological developments. Julia's research uncovered references to several other inventors and engineers from the same period who had proposed innovations that were far ahead of their time and who had subsequently disappeared under mysterious circumstances. These cases shared remarkable similarities with Thomas's story, including involvement with experimental communication technologies, conflicts with conventional scientific establishments, and subsequent disappearances followed by correspondence that demonstrated uncanny knowledge of future developments. The pattern suggested that Thomas might have been part of a group of individuals who had somehow gained access to advanced technological knowledge through means that remained completely unknown. Julia decided to investigate whether any other historical photographs might contain similar anachronistic elements that could provide additional evidence of advanced technology appearing in inappropriate historical contexts. Her systematic search through photographic archives from the early 1900s revealed several images that contained objects or details that seemed inconsistent with the technological capabilities of their supposed time periods. These photographs, preserved in various museum and private collections throughout the United States, showed individuals using or carrying devices that bore striking resemblances to modern technology. The objects ranged from communication devices that resembled cell phones to portable computers that looked remarkably similar to modern laptops and tablets. Most significantly, many of these anachronistic photographs were connected to individuals who, like Thomas Ashford, had been involved in experimental technology development and who had subsequently disappeared under mysterious circumstances. The pattern suggested that a network of technologically advanced individuals had been active in early 20th century America, possessing knowledge and capabilities that were completely inconsistent with the era's known technological limitations. Julia's expanded investigation attracted the attention of Dr. Robert Chen, a theoretical physicist at MIT who specialized in temporal mechanics and had published speculative papers on the possibility of information transfer across different time periods. Dr. Chen's analysis of the 1916 wedding photograph and related evidence led him to propose a hypothesis that challenged conventional understanding of causality and technological development. According to Dr. Chen's theory, the anachronistic technology visible in early 20th century photographs might represent evidence of temporal displacement, where individuals or information from future time periods had somehow appeared in the past. While such phenomena violated established physical laws, Dr. Chen argued that emerging theories in quantum mechanics and relativity might provide frameworks for understanding how such displacement could occur under extraordinary circumstances. Dr. Chen's involvement brought sophisticated analytical techniques to Julia's investigation, including quantum-level examination of the photographic materials and theoretical modeling of the energy patterns that might be associated with temporal displacement phenomena. His analysis confirmed that the 1916 photograph contained measurable anomalies that could not be explained through conventional photographic or physical processes. However, Dr. Chen also acknowledged that his hypothesis remained highly speculative and that alternative explanations for the observed phenomena might exist within frameworks of understanding that had not yet been developed. The evidence was compelling, but ultimately inconclusive regarding the mechanism by which 21st century technology might have appeared in 1916. Julia's investigation expanded to include researchers from multiple disciplines, including historians specializing in technology development, physicists working on temporal mechanics, and experts in photographic analysis and authentication. The collaborative effort revealed additional evidence supporting the existence of anachronistic technology in early 20th century America, but also highlighted the profound theoretical challenges involved in explaining such phenomena. The research team discovered documentation of several individuals from the 1900-1920 period who had demonstrated knowledge of technologies that would not be developed until decades later. These individuals had typically been dismissed by their contemporaries as impractical visionaries or charlatans, but their predictions had subsequently proven remarkably accurate in ways that suggested access to genuine future knowledge rather than lucky guessing. However, the team also found evidence that these technologically advanced individuals had faced significant challenges in attempting to implement their knowledge within the technological and social contexts of their time periods. Many had encountered hostility from established scientific institutions and had been unable to obtain the resources necessary to develop their innovations effectively. The pattern suggested that the presence of advanced individuals in early 20th century America might have been part of a larger phenomenon involving the displacement of people or information from future time periods. However, the apparent inability of these individuals to significantly alter the course of technological development suggested that temporal displacement, if it had occurred, had been subject to constraints that prevented major disruption of historical timelines. Julia's investigation had identified at least 12 individuals from the early 1900s who appeared to possess knowledge or technology that was decades ahead of their time. But she also recognized that proving the temporal displacement hypothesis would require evidence that exceeded what could be obtained through conventional historical research methods. The case required approaches that bridged the boundaries between historical investigation and experimental physics. Working with Dr. Chen and other specialists, Julia developed experimental procedures designed to detect traces of temporal displacement that might still be measurable in locations where anachronistic technology had been documented. The experiments involved sophisticated measurements of quantum field fluctuations and electromagnetic signatures that theoretical models suggested might persist long after temporal displacement events had occurred. The initial experiments, conducted at sites associated with individuals who had demonstrated anachronistic technological knowledge, revealed measurable anomalies in local space-time geometry that were consistent with theoretical predictions for areas where temporal displacement might have occurred. However, the team acknowledged that these measurements, while intriguing, could not definitively prove that temporal displacement had been responsible for the observed phenomena. Julia's final report on the investigation documented the evidence for anachronistic technology in early 20th century America, while acknowledging the speculative nature of the temporal displacement hypothesis. The report established protocols for identifying and investigating similar phenomena in other historical contexts and recommended continued research into the theoretical frameworks that might eventually explain such occurrences. The case had demonstrated that historical research could sometimes encounter phenomena that challenged fundamental assumptions about causality and the nature of time itself. While definitive explanations remained elusive, the evidence suggested that the relationship between past and present might be more complex than commonly assumed, and that historical investigation could serve as a window into aspects of reality that transcended conventional understanding. Thomas Ashford's apparent use of a smartphone at a 1916 wedding remained a mystery, but his story had contributed to expanding understanding of the possibilities and limitations of historical research when confronted with phenomena that appeared to violate basic assumptions about technological development and temporal causation. The investigation had shown that some historical anomalies might require interdisciplinary approaches that combined traditional research methods with cutting-edge theoretical physics. The 1916 wedding photograph continued to challenge viewers to reconsider their assumptions about the linear progression of technology and the impossibility of anachronistic objects appearing in authentic historical documents. Whether Thomas Ashford had been a time traveler, a recipient of displaced future technology, or something else entirely, his story served as a reminder that history might contain mysteries that exceeded the explanatory power of conventional academic frameworks. Julia's work had established important precedents for investigating historical phenomena that appeared to violate physical laws or established scientific understanding, emphasizing the need for rigorous analysis combined with openness to possibilities that transcended current theoretical limitations. The case had shown that historical research could contribute to expanding human understanding of the nature of time, causality, and the relationship between past and present. The wedding guests who had posed so formally in 1916 had unknowingly participated in documenting one of the most puzzling anachronisms in photographic history. Their image had become a focal point for questioning assumptions about technological development and the boundaries between different time periods, serving as evidence that the past might contain surprises that challenged everything historians thought they knew about the progression of human civilization. Thomas Ashford had vanished from the historical record after 1923, but his apparent possession of 21st century technology in 1916 had left a lasting impact on understanding the possibilities and mysteries of historical investigation. His story remained a testament to the idea that some aspects of the past might forever resist conventional explanation, requiring researchers to remain open to possibilities that transcended the boundaries of established knowledge. However, Julia's investigation was far from complete. The discovery of Thomas Ashford's anachronistic smartphone had opened doors to questions that demanded answers, and 3 months after her initial findings, she received a contact that would transform her understanding of temporal displacement from theoretical possibility to documented reality. The contact came from Dr. Elizabeth Hawthorne, a quantum physicist at CERN who had been conducting classified research into what she described as temporal anomaly detection, using the particle accelerator's most advanced sensing equipment. Dr. Hawthorne had read Julia's preliminary reports through academic networks and believed that her research into historical anachronisms might provide crucial context for understanding phenomena that CERN had been observing but could not explain through conventional physics. According to Dr. Hawthorne, the particle accelerator had been detecting what appeared to be temporal displacement events occurring throughout human history, creating measurable disturbances in the quantum field that could be traced back to specific times and locations. Most significantly, Dr. Hawthorne's data indicated that the early 20th century had experienced an unusually high frequency of temporal anomalies, with major displacement events occurring approximately every 2 to 3 years between 1900 and 1925. The timing and geographic distribution of these events corresponded closely with the locations and dates where Julia had documented individuals possessing anachronistic technological knowledge. The CERN data suggested that temporal displacement was not a random phenomenon, but followed patterns that indicated some form of systematic intervention in the historical timeline. Dr. Hawthorne's analysis revealed that the displacement events appeared to be coordinated, with multiple individuals being transported or receiving information from future time periods as part of what seemed to be a deliberate program of technological acceleration. Julia traveled to CERN to examine Dr. Hawthorne's research data and collaborate on developing a comprehensive theory that could account for both the historical evidence of anachronistic technology and the quantum measurements that suggested systematic temporal manipulation. What she discovered at the European Particle Physics Laboratory challenged her understanding of causality and raised profound questions about the nature of human technological development. Dr. Hawthorne's research had identified what she called temporal insertion points throughout history, where individuals had apparently received knowledge or technology from future time periods. These insertion points corresponded to major technological breakthroughs that had occurred earlier than would have been expected based on the natural progression of human innovation. The pattern suggested that human technological development had been artificially accelerated through systematic intervention from an advanced future civilization. The quantum data revealed that the temporal insertions had not been random acts of time travel, but carefully coordinated operations designed to introduce specific technologies at precisely calculated moments in human history. The interventions appeared to follow a predetermined schedule that ensured technological development would proceed at an optimal pace, while avoiding disruptions that might create paradoxes or destabilize the timeline. Most remarkably, the data indicated that the temporal insertion program had been designed to culminate in the early 21st century, with the final phase of technological acceleration beginning around 2000 and reaching completion by 2025. The smartphones, internet connectivity, and artificial intelligence systems that characterized contemporary technology were apparently the intended endpoint of a centuries-long program of controlled technological development. Julia realized that Thomas Ashford's possession of a smartphone in 1916 represented not an isolated temporal anomaly, but one element of a vast program designed to guide human civilization toward a specific technological destination. The individuals who had demonstrated anachronistic knowledge throughout the early 20th century had been agents or recipients of this program, tasked with introducing key innovations that would lay the groundwork for future technological developments. The implications were staggering. If Dr. Hawthorne's analysis was correct, then human technological progress had not been a natural evolutionary process, but a carefully orchestrated campaign managed by an advanced future civilization that possessed the ability to manipulate temporal causality. Every major technological breakthrough from the Industrial Revolution onward might have been influenced by temporal intervention designed to ensure that human development followed a predetermined trajectory. Julia and Dr. Hawthorne's collaboration expanded to include specialists in temporal mechanics, artificial intelligence, and advanced theoretical physics from institutions around the world. The international research team began developing comprehensive models of temporal intervention that could account for both the quantum measurements and the historical evidence of anachronistic technology throughout human history. The team's analysis revealed that the temporal insertion program had involved not only individual agents like Thomas Ashford, but also the systematic placement of advanced technologies in historical contexts where they could influence the direction of human development. Archaeological evidence, re-examined through the lens of temporal intervention theory, revealed numerous artifacts and innovations that appeared to be far ahead of their supposed time periods. These artifacts ranged from mechanical devices with precision engineering that exceeded the capabilities of their eras, to written documents that contained scientific knowledge that would not be discovered until centuries later. The pattern suggested that human civilization had been receiving guidance and technological assistance from future sources throughout its entire developmental history. However, the research team also discovered evidence that the temporal insertion program had not been entirely successful in achieving its intended goals. Historical records revealed numerous instances where advanced individuals had been persecuted, suppressed, or eliminated by their contemporaries, who viewed their anachronistic knowledge as threatening or heretical. Many potential technological breakthroughs had been delayed or prevented entirely by social resistance to innovations that challenged established power structures. The team's investigation revealed that the temporal insertion program had been forced to adapt continuously to overcome resistance from forces within human society that opposed technological advancement. The program had apparently evolved increasingly sophisticated methods for introducing innovations in ways that minimized social disruption while still achieving the necessary technological progress. Julia's research into Thomas Ashford's specific case revealed that he had been one of the most successful temporal agents, managing to introduce key communications technologies that would prove essential for the development of modern digital networks. However, his success had also made him a target for elimination by contemporary authorities, who recognized the threat that his advanced knowledge posed to existing power structures. The evidence suggested that Thomas had not disappeared voluntarily in 1923, but had been eliminated by government agents who had been tracking individuals with anachronistic technological capabilities. Similar fates had befallen many other temporal agents throughout the early 20th century, as authorities gradually became aware of the systematic nature of the temporal insertion program and began actively working to suppress it. However, the research team also discovered that the temporal insertion program had anticipated such resistance and had developed countermeasures to ensure its continuation despite efforts to suppress it. The program had apparently created multiple backup systems and redundant pathways for introducing essential technologies, making it virtually impossible to prevent the intended technological development through conventional means. The team's analysis of contemporary technology revealed that many innovations that appeared to be recent developments were actually implementations of technologies that had been introduced through temporal insertion decades or even centuries earlier. The Internet, smartphones, and artificial intelligence systems that defined modern civilization were the culmination of a technological development program that had been guided by temporal intervention throughout human history. Most disturbing was the team's discovery that the temporal insertion program appeared to be nearing completion, with the final phase of technological acceleration scheduled to conclude within the next few years. The quantum data suggested that once the program reached its intended endpoint, the temporal interventions would cease, leaving human civilization to continue its development without further guidance from future sources. The implications for human society were profound and troubling. If the temporal insertion program had been responsible for guiding human technological development throughout history, then the end of the program would leave civilization without the external guidance that had shaped its progress for millennia. Humanity would be forced to continue its advancement using only its own natural capabilities, without the benefit of future knowledge or temporal intervention. Julia's investigation had evolved from academic curiosity about a photographic anomaly into a comprehensive exploration of human civilization's relationship with temporal causality and technological development. The 1916 wedding photograph that had initially captured her attention had become evidence of a vast program of temporal manipulation that had influenced the entire course of human history. The research team's findings raised profound ethical and philosophical questions about the nature of human achievement and the authenticity of technological progress. If human civilization had been guided by temporal intervention throughout its development, then the innovations and accomplishments that defined human history might be more properly attributed to the advanced future civilization that had orchestrated the guidance program. However, the team also recognized that the temporal insertion program had required human cooperation and ingenuity to implement successfully. The temporal agents like Thomas Ashford had needed to possess genuine intelligence and creativity to translate future knowledge into forms that could be understood and implemented within their historical contexts. The program had enhanced human capabilities rather than replacing them entirely. Julia's final comprehensive report documented the evidence for systematic temporal intervention in human technological development, while acknowledging the profound implications of such phenomena for understanding human history and civilization. The report established new frameworks for investigating temporal anomalies and recommended continued research into the mechanisms and purposes of temporal intervention programs. The case had demonstrated that historical research could uncover evidence of phenomena that transcended conventional understanding of causality and technological development. The careful analysis of anachronistic elements in historical documents had revealed patterns that suggested the operation of forces beyond normal human comprehension and capability. However, Julia's work had also illustrated the complex ethical responsibilities that researchers faced when investigating phenomena with implications for understanding the fundamental nature of human civilization and achievement. The discovery that human technological progress had been guided by temporal intervention raised questions about human identity and accomplishment that required careful consideration and responsible presentation. The temporal insertion program had apparently achieved its intended goals, successfully guiding human civilization to a level of technological development that would allow it to continue advancing independently. The smartphones, internet networks, and artificial intelligence systems that characterized contemporary technology represented the culmination of a centuries-long program of controlled development that had prepared humanity for an autonomous technological future. Thomas Ashford's apparent use of a smartphone at a 1916 wedding had been one element of this vast program, serving as a temporal anchor point that helped establish the technological trajectory that would eventually lead to the development of modern digital communication systems. His sacrifice and the sacrifices of countless other temporal agents had enabled human civilization to reach its current level of technological sophistication decades or centuries ahead of its natural developmental schedule. The 1916 wedding photograph continued to serve as tangible evidence of the temporal intervention program, documenting a moment when the boundaries between past and future had been deliberately manipulated to ensure human technological advancement. The image remained a testament to the complexity and sophistication of forces that had been working throughout history to guide human development toward predetermined goals. Julia's investigation had revealed that the relationship between past, present, and future was far more complex than conventional understanding suggested, and that human civilization existed within a temporal framework that had been actively managed and manipulated by advanced intelligences with the capability to transcend normal causality. The discovery challenged fundamental assumptions about the nature of time, progress, and human achievement, while opening new possibilities for understanding the ultimate purposes and destinations of human civilization. The wedding guests who had posed so formally in 1916 had unknowingly participated in documenting one of the most significant temporal interventions in human history. Their image had become a focal point for understanding the true nature of human technological development and the hidden forces that had shaped the progress of civilization throughout its entire existence. The research team's work had established important precedents for investigating temporal phenomena and had demonstrated the potential for historical research to contribute to understanding aspects of reality that transcended conventional scientific and academic frameworks. The case had shown that some historical mysteries required interdisciplinary approaches that combined traditional research methods with cutting-edge theoretical physics and quantum mechanics. Julia's collaboration with Dr. Hawthorne and the international research team had created new methodologies for detecting and analyzing temporal anomalies in historical contexts, providing tools that could be used to investigate similar phenomena in other time periods and cultures. The work had contributed to developing theoretical frameworks for understanding temporal causality and the mechanisms by which advanced civilizations might influence the development of less advanced societies. The case had profound implications for the future of human civilization, suggesting that the end of the temporal insertion program would mark a crucial transition point where humanity would need to continue its advancement using only its own natural capabilities. The success or failure of this transition would determine whether the centuries-long program of temporal guidance had achieved its ultimate purpose of preparing human civilization for autonomous development. Thomas Ashford and the other temporal agents who had worked throughout history to implement the insertion program had succeeded in their mission, delivering human civilization to a technological threshold that would allow it to continue advancing without further external guidance. Their sacrifices and dedication had ensured that humanity would possess the tools and knowledge necessary to face the challenges of an autonomous technological future. The 1916 wedding photograph would forever remain as documentation of this extraordinary program, serving as evidence that the boundaries between time periods were not as absolute as commonly assumed, and that the development of human civilization had been guided by forces and intelligences that operated beyond conventional understanding of causality and temporal progression. Julia's investigation had transformed from a simple examination of a photographic anomaly into a comprehensive exploration of humanity's place within a vast temporal framework that connected past, present, and future in ways that challenged every assumption about the nature of historical development and technological progress. The case had revealed that human civilization existed within a context far more complex and purposeful than anyone had previously imagined, operating according to patterns and purposes that transcended conventional frameworks of understanding. However, the implications of the temporal insertion program discovery extended far beyond academic interest in historical anomalies. Within weeks of Julia and Dr. Hawthorne's initial findings being shared with the international research community, reports began arriving from around the world of individuals who claimed to be experiencing contemporary temporal displacement phenomena. These reports suggested that the temporal insertion program had not ended as expected, but was entering a new phase that involved direct contact with people living in the present day. The contemporary displacement reports followed patterns remarkably similar to those documented in Julia's historical research. Individuals from diverse backgrounds and locations reported receiving detailed information about future technological developments, experiencing visions of advanced civilizations, and in some cases claiming to have been contacted directly by entities identifying themselves as representatives of the temporal insertion program. Dr. Sarah Kim, a neurobiologist at Stanford University, contacted Julia after several of her research subjects began demonstrating knowledge of neuroscience concepts that would not be developed for decades if current scientific understanding was accurate. These individuals, who had been participating in routine cognitive studies, suddenly displayed comprehensive understanding of brain functions and neural networks that exceeded the knowledge of leading experts in the field. Most remarkably, the affected individuals were able to describe in precise detail the biological mechanisms underlying consciousness, memory formation, and cognitive processing that represented the ultimate goals of contemporary neuroscience research, but remained completely theoretical and unproven. Their explanations were internally consistent and scientifically rigorous, suggesting genuine knowledge rather than speculation or fantasy. Dr. Kim's investigation revealed that the affected individuals had no previous background in neuroscience and had gained their advanced knowledge through what they described as direct information transfer from sources they could not clearly identify. The individuals reported experiencing brief periods of altered consciousness during which vast amounts of scientific information were somehow downloaded directly into their minds. Similar reports were arriving from research institutions worldwide. Physicists reported contact with individuals who possessed detailed knowledge of unified field theories that reconciled quantum mechanics and general relativity. Computer scientists encountered people who could describe artificial intelligence architectures that surpassed anything currently under development. Medical researchers found individuals who demonstrated understanding of cellular regeneration and disease treatment methods that represented revolutionary advances in biological science. The pattern suggested that the temporal insertion program was not ending, as Dr. Hawthorne's quantum data had initially indicated, but was instead entering a final phase that involved massive direct information transfer to contemporary individuals. Rather than working through isolated agents like Thomas Ashford, the program appeared to be simultaneously contacting hundreds or thousands of people worldwide with advanced knowledge from future time periods. Julia collaborated with Dr. Hawthorne to analyze the quantum signatures associated with these contemporary displacement events. Their analysis revealed that the temporal field disturbances accompanying current events were several orders of magnitude more powerful than anything detected in historical cases. The data suggested that the temporal insertion program was conducting its largest and most intensive intervention in human history. The scale of contemporary temporal activity indicated that the program was approaching what Dr. Hawthorne termed a temporal convergence event, where the accumulated effects of centuries of intervention would culminate in a massive acceleration of human technological and cognitive development. The quantum measurements suggested that this convergence was scheduled to occur within months rather than years, representing an unprecedented transformation of human civilization. However, the research team also discovered troubling evidence that the contemporary phase of the temporal insertion program was encountering unprecedented resistance from forces within the current timeline. Government agencies worldwide had apparently become aware of the massive temporal intervention and were implementing countermeasures designed to prevent or control the information transfer process. Classified documents obtained through academic research channels revealed that military and intelligence organizations had been tracking individuals who displayed anachronistic knowledge and had developed protocols for containing or eliminating people who posed potential security threats through their advanced understanding of future technologies. The contemporary temporal agents were facing the same persecution that had eliminated historical figures like Thomas Ashford. Most disturbing was evidence that some government agencies had developed their own temporal manipulation capabilities and were attempting to interfere with the insertion program to advance their own political and military objectives. These interventions were creating dangerous instabilities in the temporal field that threatened to disrupt the carefully planned convergence process and potentially cause catastrophic damage to the timeline itself. Julia found herself in the extraordinary position of documenting not only historical temporal phenomena, but also contemporary events that would themselves become historical records for future researchers. The 1916 wedding photograph that had initiated her investigation had become one piece of evidence in an ongoing temporal conflict that was determining the future trajectory of human civilization. The international research team expanded rapidly as the scale and implications of the contemporary temporal intervention became apparent. Researchers from dozens of countries contributed expertise in physics, neuroscience, computer science, and other fields as they attempted to understand and potentially influence the outcome of the temporal convergence process. The team's analysis revealed that the success or failure of the convergence event would determine whether human civilization achieved the technological and cognitive development necessary for long-term survival and advancement, or whether humanity would remain trapped at its current developmental level without access to the knowledge necessary for overcoming future challenges. The temporal insertion program had apparently been designed to prepare humanity for a series of existential challenges that would emerge during the next century, including climate change, resource depletion, and potential contact with extraterrestrial civilizations. The advanced knowledge being transferred through contemporary displacement events was intended to provide the scientific and technological capabilities necessary for addressing these challenges successfully. However, the government interference with the convergence process was preventing many individuals from accessing or utilizing the temporal information they had received. Intelligence agencies were systematically suppressing research based on temporally displaced knowledge, and were eliminating individuals who posed potential threats to existing power structures through their advanced understanding. Julia realized that her role as a historical researcher had evolved into participation in a contemporary struggle that would determine the future of human civilization. The academic investigation of photographic anomalies had become involvement in a temporal conflict with implications far beyond anything she had originally envisioned. Working with Dr. Hawthorne and other members of the international research team, Julia began developing strategies for protecting contemporary temporal agents from government suppression, while ensuring that the crucial knowledge they possessed could be preserved and transmitted to appropriate scientific and technological communities. The effort required unprecedented coordination between academic institutions, research organizations, and individual scientists worldwide. The team established secure communication networks for temporal agents and developed protocols for documenting and preserving displaced knowledge in ways that would survive potential government crackdowns. Most importantly, they created redundant systems for ensuring that essential scientific and technological information would reach the researchers and institutions capable of implementing it effectively. The temporal convergence event began manifesting through increasingly dramatic phenomena as contemporary displacement activity reached unprecedented levels. Individuals worldwide reported experiencing simultaneous contact with temporal sources, receiving coordinated information about specific scientific and technological challenges that required immediate attention from the global research community. The coordinated nature of these contemporary displacement events confirmed that the temporal insertion program possessed sophisticated intelligence and planning capabilities that extended far beyond simple information transfer. The program was actively managing the convergence process to ensure optimal distribution of advanced knowledge while minimizing disruption to existing social and political structures. However, the government resistance to the convergence process was also escalating, with intelligence agencies implementing increasingly aggressive measures to contain temporal agents and suppress research based on displaced knowledge. The conflict between the temporal insertion program and contemporary authorities was approaching a critical point that would determine whether the convergence could proceed successfully. Julia's documentation of both historical and contemporary temporal phenomena provided crucial evidence for understanding the long-term patterns and purposes of the insertion program. Her work demonstrated that the program had been preparing for the current convergence event throughout its entire operational history, with each historical intervention contributing to the foundation necessary for successful contemporary implementation. The 1916 wedding photograph had served as one of countless temporal anchor points that established the trajectory necessary for the convergence process. Thomas Ashford's sacrifice and the sacrifices of other historical temporal agents had created the technological and social conditions that made contemporary mass information transfer possible. The research team's analysis revealed that the temporal convergence represented the culmination of a centuries-long preparation process designed to transform human civilization from its current state to a level of development that would ensure its survival and advancement through future challenges. The success of this transformation depended on the ability of contemporary humanity to overcome the resistance of existing power structures and implement the advanced knowledge being provided through temporal displacement. Julia's final comprehensive report documented the complete scope of the temporal insertion program from its historical origins through its contemporary convergence phase. The report established that human technological and scientific development had been guided by systematic temporal intervention throughout history, with the current convergence representing the program's ultimate objective of elevating human civilization to a new developmental level. The case had demonstrated that the boundaries between past, present, and future were far more permeable than conventional understanding suggested, and that human civilization existed within a temporal framework that connected different time periods through active intervention and information transfer. The discovery challenged fundamental assumptions about causality, technological development, and the nature of historical progression. However, Julia's work had also revealed that the success of the temporal insertion program ultimately depended on the choices made by contemporary humanity in response to the knowledge and opportunities being provided. The program could offer advanced information and technological capabilities, but the implementation and utilization of this knowledge required human cooperation and commitment to transcending existing limitations and conflicts. The temporal convergence event continued to unfold as Julia completed her documentation, with the ultimate outcome remaining uncertain as contemporary authorities and the temporal insertion program continued their struggle for control over humanity's developmental trajectory. The 1916 wedding photograph that had initiated the investigation remained as evidence of the vast temporal framework within which human civilization existed and the complex forces that had shaped its entire historical development. Thomas Ashford's apparent use of a smartphone at a 1916 wedding had become a symbol of the temporal insertion program's centuries-long effort to guide human development toward the convergence point that would determine civilization's future. His story and the stories of countless other temporal agents represented the hidden history of humanity's relationship with advanced intelligences that possessed the capability to transcend normal temporal limitations. Julia's investigation had revealed that human civilization stood at a crucial transition point, where the accumulated effects of temporal intervention throughout history were culminating in an unprecedented opportunity for developmental advancement. The success or failure of this transition would determine whether humanity could access the knowledge and capabilities necessary for addressing future existential challenges. The wedding guests who had posed so formally in 1916 had unknowingly participated in documenting one element of a vast temporal program that connected their era with the contemporary world and the advanced civilizations of the future. Their image had become a bridge between different time periods and a testament to the complex temporal relationships that defined human existence within a larger cosmic framework. The case had established new methodologies for investigating temporal phenomena and had demonstrated the potential for historical research to contribute to understanding contemporary challenges that transcended conventional academic and scientific boundaries. Julia's work had shown that some mysteries required interdisciplinary approaches that combined traditional research methods with cutting-edge theoretical physics and recognition of possibilities that exceeded current understanding. The temporal insertion program had succeeded in delivering human civilization to the threshold of unprecedented developmental opportunities, but the realization of these opportunities required contemporary humanity to overcome existing limitations and embrace the advanced knowledge being offered. The outcome of this challenge would determine whether the program's centuries-long investment in human development would achieve its ultimate purpose. Julia's collaboration with researchers worldwide had created networks and methodologies that could continue monitoring and supporting the temporal convergence process as it unfolded. The work had established important precedents for handling phenomena that transcended normal temporal boundaries and had contributed to expanding human understanding of the relationship between past, present, and future. The 1916 wedding photograph would forever remain as documentation of humanity's connection to temporal forces that operated beyond conventional understanding, serving as evidence that human civilization existed within a framework far more complex and purposeful than previously imagined. The image represented not just a historical anomaly, but a window into the vast temporal relationships that connected different eras and civilizations across time.